Today on Pilot's Discretion, our guest is aviation career coach and former pro pilot James Onieal. He talks about the state of the aviation job market, myths about airline pilots, and flying for the FAA. Pilot's Discretion starts right now. Hi pilots, I'm John Zimmerman, and thanks for listening to Pilot's Discretion from Sporties. Visit sporties.com/podcast for today's show links and access to our complete archives. Also, don't forget to check out our newest online magazine from Sporties called IFR Focus. This is the place to learn all about instrument flying, whether you're a student pilot or an old pro, with in-depth articles from writers like Jeff Van West and Elaine Coe. Visit ifrfocus.com to subscribe for free. Today, my guest is James Onieal, one of the most honest and knowledgeable voices in aviation on the topic of airline pilot hiring. He runs Raven Career Development, a company that offers coaching, interview prep, and other services for both current and aspiring professional pilots. Before that, he had a varied flying career, including time at an airline, at a major fractional provider, and at the FAA. Now he flies a Baron when he's not advising pilots. James, welcome to Pilot's Discretion.
Thank you. When you tell people I used to work for the FAA, I get afraid they're going to turn off, delete, go away, and run.
Yeah, you were one of the good guys. We'll talk about the interesting niche you had there at the FAA. So don't worry, he's not really an FAA guy.
Yeah. I'm one of the friendly ones, right?
That's right. You're actually here to help.
Here to help. Yeah, exactly.
So you talk to a lot of pilots who are pursuing a career in aviation, and you told me that you start not by asking about their dream job or how much time they have in their logbook or what airline they like. Instead, you start with a very personal question, which I thought was fascinating. So tell us what that question is and why you ask it.
Sure. So the question is, how much is enough? And there's a couple of reasons on why I asked that question, which I'm sure we'll probably get into a couple of them. But right now, so I'm 42. I had the benefit that, I started flying in the year 2000. So I had the first 7 years of my flying career where I didn't have social media getting shoved down my throat, telling me everything I was doing was wrong and I was a horrible failure. That only, you had to be face to face with another pilot to hear those things, which meant you could only hear them one at a time, but you couldn't have 10,000 comments in 3 minutes. And so today, when you look at folks coming into the industry, and honestly, it doesn't matter if they want to go corporate, cargo, airline, military, it really runs the whole gamut. But when they go on social media all day long, you're kind of being fed a narrative that you can make this large sum of money and have a lot of time off. And there are periods of your career where that will happen or might happen. But it's probably not going to be the entirety of your career. Same thing. If you go online and you take a look at stuff that talks about starting your own business, right? How you can make all these millions and you're not doing a lot of work. But the reality of the situation is, go sit off the end of a runway at JFK or LaGuardia or Newark or Chicago or LA or Phoenix, any major airport in the country, and you're going to see a jet take off every, 30, 60 seconds. And if it's going domestic, there's going to be a minimum of 2 pilots in the cockpit. And if it's going international, there's going to be 3 to 4 pilots in the cockpit. So if you have an airplane taking off at every one of those airports every 30 to 60 seconds with 2 to 4 pilots on board, where are all the pilots sitting at home doing nothing? Yes, there is a percentage of pilots that are sitting reserve and they're bidding specific schedules and so on and so forth. But that's like when you watch those diet commercials where they show somebody that lost 40 pounds in 7 days and they go, these results may not be typical. It's kind of the same thing. And so the imagery that is being put out is this concept of work-life balance where, like I said, you can make all this money and you can have all this time off. And so the difficulty is that's not really reality. It is for some people, and it will be reality for a lot of people for spurts in their career, but for the entirety of your career, probably not. So the question is, when we take a look at time off, we take a look at time with family, we take a look at time spending hobbies, we take a look at how much money you're making. The question is, how much is enough? And the big premise that people don't understand with money is they think that when they make a lot of money, or as they start making more money, that their problems are going to go away, that they're going to be happy. But the reality is, money can buy pleasure, but it cannot buy happiness. right? I can use money to buy an ice cream cone and I can enjoy that ice cream cone. That's not happiness. That's pleasure, right? I can buy a sports car. I can buy a home. I can buy things that will create pleasurable experiences, but over the long haul, right? Your day to day, it's not really going to create happiness. And when people ultimately are talking to me, they're really looking for happiness. They're looking for what's that right balance. And it's not, I wish it was the same for every person because I could just give everybody a handout and go, here's the answer to life. But, some people uh, have whole bunches of things that they want to accomplish at work to get fulfillment. They don't just want to be a first officer or a captain. They want to work their way into the training department or management or safety or so on and so forth. All the way to the complete opposite end of the spectrum where you have people that go, look, man, I love flying airplanes. I want to go work and go do that, but I really want to coach T-ball and mow my own lawn. And both of those are okay. But in order for that to become a realistic objective, we have to define what is enough. Otherwise, when you hit that mark, when you first get into aviation and you set that arbitrary goal that when I become a captain on this, or I get to fly my first jet, that'll be enough. When you hit that goal, magically, you're going to inadvertently move the goalpost because until it's clear in your head on what enough is, and you can write that down on a sticky note, put it on every wall of your house, so that when you walk in and being a captain is good enough, flying a jet is good enough, being an airline pilot is good enough, right? You know, having 14 days off a month is good, whatever that is, right? Making $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year, $400,000 a year is enough. But people think, oh man, as soon as I make six figures, that'll be enough. And then they make $100,000 a year and they go, oh, you know what? But the rest of my buddies are making 200. So they set that next target. Then they work to the 200. You know what? I got buddies now that are making 350 and they're making this money or they're making these personal sacrifices to go make this money. And if you ask them, what are you going to do when you get that money? They don't have an answer. They just don't want to not have what somebody else has. And so what that can do is create a situation where somebody is constantly moving the goalposts of their career with unintentionally without realizing it and never being happy.
It's such a good question. It's such a good place to start, especially for a young person, because simply asking the question is a start. I think most people never even think about it. They just assume that somehow they'll know it someday when they get enough. So just thinking about that at the beginning of a career is such a great place to ground yourself. And I feel like I hear that question more recently, just based on where we are in the market, which depending on who you talk to, the market is all over the place for airline hiring in particular. So, the stats, 2022, the industry hired over 13,000 airline pilots. Last year, it was less than 5,000. Now that's both a major drop and also a pretty good number by historical standards. So where do you think we are today in the hiring cycle? If you're talking to a new person and they're thinking about what is enough and they're thinking about, is this the right time to get in the market? Is it all doom and gloom, or is there reason for hope if I'm a time building CFI or even a regional first officer?
Sure. So I'm sure you've probably heard the saying, it's a recession when your neighbor loses his job. It's a depression when you lose yours.
Right.
So context matters. Um, and if you'll permit me just to kind of take some of those numbers and blow those out a little bit further. But if you go all the way back to like the 80s and 90s, and you take a look at what a high hiring year at the major airline level was, you were talking like 2,000 pilots a year, right? Okay. When we take a look at spikes in hiring, you have to go back to like 2015, 2016 was one of the first times. I think we might have hit it in like 2005 timeframe as well, but like where it went from 2,000 to 5,000, but then it immediately went back down again. 2015, 2016, we all of a sudden hit that 5,000 number again, right? And now we're on the sugar high. And then coronavirus happens. And that is what it looks like when hiring stops. Right. So 2001, 2008, and coronavirus. That's what it looks like when hiring stops. The problem is during coronavirus, yes, it was a very shocking time, but everybody got bailed out. For people that haven't been through a downturn before, that may have felt bad. But if you go to 2001 or you go through 2008, where you had 2, 3, 4 years of stagnation, right? Coronavirus was a year followed by explosive growth where we went to, it wasn't 13,000 pilots in in just 1 year. It was 13,000 pilots in 2022 and then another 13,000 in 2023, right? So most people that are looking to kind of land a job right now have been in the industry for 10 years or less. And so their perspective is a low hiring number is 5,000 pilots. My perspective, right? I started instrument training in June of 2001, right? So my perspective on low hiring was 0, right? When I was applying for CFI jobs in 2002, I remember getting turned down by a flight school because you needed to have 1,000 hours of 121 FO time to get a job teaching in a Cessna. Like, I mean, so when we take a look at what's happening now, for a lot of people, it feels like the music has stopped. It hasn't, but it has slowed dramatically, like to the tune of somewhere around 70%. There's a difference though, right? 2008, when I got laid off, or 2010 is when I actually got laid off from NetJets. I was applying for jobs at Home Depot with 3,500 hours, 2,500 hours of jet time, so on and so forth. Right now, for notwithstanding, I'll take the low time CFIs. I'm going to move them into a slightly different category here for a minute. But call it 1,000 hours and above, they're dealing with having to compete very hard for a job. And so that's a bit of a shocking experience if you've never had to compete, if you've never had to put that level of energy in to get a no, right? That's awkward. When you're talking about the lower time guys, the 300, 500, 700 hour pilots, some of those guys are having to offset some of their work with non-aviation stuff because the debt is coming due for the flight training they paid for. So there are a couple of different categories right now, but look, hiring's happening. I mean, we have internal Slack channels inside my company where every person that we work with, we go through, who got hired, where did they get hired, so on and so forth. And I can start at the top. I had a guy yesterday just got his second conditional job offer. He had one from United, one from American. I have another one, got one from United. Now they're interviewing at another large 121 cargo operator. The amount of people that are getting ESs from NetJets, from FlexJet, from Piedmont, from PSA, from Envoy, like every carrier, I have guys getting hired there. But when you talk to them, what they're saying is, I started the process 6, 9, 12 months ago. So on social media, what it looks like, man, that guy got it overnight, or man, she got it overnight. There's a lot of effort and energy being done below the water level. Think about that duck, right? Looks really peaceful on top. Those feet are going crazy underneath the water. It's a lot more effort and energy right now, but it's doable.
That's great perspective because I think you're right. That's the same thing we see with our flight school. Jobs are still there. Airlines are hiring at a pretty good rate, but it's if your sense of normal is 2023, it's far down from that, and it will take more work. So I guess the natural follow-up is, what does that work look like? For a period of time, people had a perception that if I had 1,500 hours in a heartbeat, I could get hired. And that may have been true for a special 9-month period there a few years ago. Probably not true today. So what does that look like today? What do I need to be doing to stand out as a candidate? Obviously, build my hours, get my certificates, all that. But beyond the table stakes, at a high level, what do you advise pilots to be thinking about?
Sure. So the short answer is that's relational networking. And I'll talk about kind of what that is in a little bit. But before I dive deep into that, I just want to make sure for everybody that's listening, I never want to come across as dismissive when I say, hey, it takes hard work. I remember when I was kind of getting my start, I had people that fit into 2 different groups. I had kind of one group, which is like, listen, kid, you just got to go work hard. And it was like, thanks, great. There was another group of people that were like, look, I've been down this path before. You're going to have to work hard. Let me share what worked for me and what didn't. So the energy that I want to come into this conversation is the second one, not the like, hey, kid, go work hard. So let's use kind of you and I as an example. You were kind enough to reach out to me, I think via LinkedIn, I think is how we originally connected.
Yep.
I think you probably heard me on another podcast, and you had a genius way of starting the conversation. You shot me a compliment, and you asked for nothing. All you did was, "Hey, James, I've heard you on a couple of different podcasts. Just want to say I really liked your content." You didn't say, "Can you come on the podcast?" You didn't say, "Hey, can you do me a favor?" You didn't say, "Hey, can you walk my resume?" You didn't ask me for anything. You just started with a compliment. But what you did is you put the bait on the hook for me to start a conversation. Now, I wrote back, "Hey, thank you very much," right? And that led to, I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I asked you some questions about you. And then I dropped, "Hey, by the way, I live right up the road from you. Do you want to go grab lunch?" And so you and I got in our airplanes and we flew over to Urbana. And or actually, both of us did the same thing. We bought a friend.
Right.
You brought a friend and I brought my wife. So now a conversation that started by you making a compliment within about 2 weeks led to us meeting face to face and having lunch. And now there were 4 of us at the table, not 2 of us. We sat down. We didn't talk about business. We didn't talk about what we could do for each other. We didn't talk about money. It was just, I asked questions about you, you asked questions about me. It was trust and rapport building. The difficulty when it comes to networking is a lot of folks pivot immediately into what can you do for me or what can I do for you? And by the way, that's not their fault. That's how most people teach it, right? And so I use the word networking because most people know what it is, but I actually don't like it. I like the phrase relationship nurturing better because it changes the energy. And here's what the difference is. Every one of us has probably worked with a person that was an Eeyore, right? Miserable to work with, could always find the negative in everything. If that person handed you a resume and they recommended their buddy, you're probably going to take that resume and automatically throw it in the garbage because you're going, if that person's friends with you, I don't want to be around them. So when people go into these networking engagements, they're thinking about, can you write me a letter of recommendation? Can you give me an internal referral? But they haven't vetted the person yet. How do you know they're not a horrible cultural fit at the company they work for? How do you know there's somebody that all their coworkers don't like? How do you know there's somebody that will be willing to advocate for you on the back end? And so if I can start the conversation with just trying to feel out, do I think there is any cultural fit between me and that person? What will happen is we're going to naturally start conversations about, what do you like doing? What do you do for fun? How is your family? What do you do for work? How is work like? You will eventually pivot the conversation back around to me. Or in this case, I pivoted the conversation back around to you. You don't actually have to work that hard to try and get them to do anything for you. They'll do it automatically once they feel the connection. The difficulty is, if anyone's done any online dating, you're going to go through 1,000 duds to get one good one, right? And that the reason why the relationship nurturing is so effective is because 99% of people will not take the time to go through the 999 duds. Because even when you're good at it, it's brutal. Do you know how many lunches I've gone to where 10 minutes into lunch, I went, why the hell did I volunteer to come out for this? Where I'm sitting there going, how am I going to get out of this conversation? Or how am I, you know what I'm saying? Like you have to put yourself out there. You're going to have a lot of conversations that are going to go nowhere. You're going to make slip ups. You're going to say things that like, ooh, that didn't come off well, or so on and so forth. But the willingness to take that risk and put in that effort and energy is going to get that return on investment. This is why when we work with folks, yes, we rewrite their resumes. Yes, we fill out their applications for them. Yes, we write their LinkedIn profile for them. Yes, we get on LinkedIn and help them write the messages to people to even know how to get the conversation started. Yes, we do the one-on-one interview prep with them. But the biggest thing that people say, they go, look, man, you write a great resume, you do a great application, yada, yada, yada. But what I'm paying for is the ability to get on the phone with you when I've just had a conversation with somebody, or I'm not able to get a conversation with somebody and my self-esteem's low and I don't know what to do to get myself out of this situation. The amount of times I get on the phone with somebody to effectively give them a hug, and I know that can sound cheesy, but when you're on your 556th rejection, you need a hug. A lot of this is being able to persist through the rejection when you can't see any light at the end of the tunnel, but somebody that's already gone through that tunnel knows the light's coming in 100 more feet. And so having that emotional support structure, whether it's your family, whether it's somebody like us, whether it's a mentor, but having that support structure surrounding you, that's what actually gets you through this. And it's not people telling you stories about how it was harder for me than it was for you. It's people telling you stories about how when it was hard for me and I wanted to give up, here's how I got through it.
So how about the flying part of this? I think that advice is well taken, and not enough people put in the effort there. But surely I've got to do something to stand out on the resume. Is it the amount of time I have? Is it multi-time? Is it the variety of my experience? Is it turbine time? I've heard you talk about logging time versus learning time. What do I need to be doing with the time spent in the cockpit to make sure I'm making myself the most attractive candidate?
The difficulty with so what we're talking about is how do you differentiate yourself? And the way to differentiate yourself is to be different than everybody else. But the problem is to be different than everybody else, you got to stick out. And a lot of pilots don't like sticking out. Um, so it depends on your personality. And I'll go into a couple of different categories. So let's take a CFI that's starting out. If you're the type, like for instance, for me, I somewhat inadvertently fell into taking everyone's students that were struggling. I'm really, really patient. I like hard problems to solve. And so if any CFI had a student where like I can't teach them how to land or they're struggling on steep turns or whatever, I would take that student for 3 or 4 lessons, fix that problem, send them back to their other instructor. After about 3 or 4 times of doing that, right? All of a sudden the instructors kind of got a gist of, hey, if I don't want to deal with this, send it over to James. Well, now when I write my resume and I put my flight instruction job, I could put on there that I specialize in difficult students, and I've increased the pass rate from 60% to 85% by doing X, Y, and Z. When you're putting together a resume, there's 2 types of content, and this holds true for the application, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. But there's 2 types of content that you put on there. One is content that qualifies you, so that's certificates, ratings, flight times. But the other is content that differentiates you. And that's the bullets that go underneath each individual job. And so you've got to think through, am I the CFI that's sitting in the FBO all day long, waiting for the discovery flight to come in, giving demonstration conversations with people before they get out there and go flying? Am I the CFI that works with difficult students? Am I the CFI that teaches spin training? Am I the regional FO that even though I don't hold a formal title, every one of my students I have and CFIs for my school, I'm volunteering time on the weekends to mentor them? The big miss that we find, so like when we write a resume for someone, we do an hour and a half one-on-one interview with them where we're asking them whole bunches of questions about stuff they wouldn't have thought of, right? The amount of times where we find stuff where people are like, yeah, but I didn't have an official title. Who cares? Nobody cares, right? Like people, you don't promote at work. You don't get opportunity by starting with a title. You get it by solving problems, and then they'll give you a title at some point, right? You don't have to be part of a formal organization to hold the title of mentor. The amount of CFIs that go, yeah, I stay in contact with my students. Yeah, I stay in contact with a bunch of instructors. Yeah, I sit down and before they go to training, I run through with them. Here's how to start studying systems. Here's how to go through flows and profiles and call outs and memory items. The amount of captains that it's like, hey, you're getting low time 1,500-hour FOs transitioning over. They've never been in a jet before. Are you doing a lot of mentoring in the cockpit? They're like, oh, yeah. but I'm not a check airman. I don't care. What are you talking to them about? Oh, radio usage. I'm going through flight releases with them. I'm talking about de-icing procedures. The amount of folks, same thing, captains. Hey, do you have a lot of rotary transition pilots that you're working with? Oh, yeah, these helicopter guys, first time they've been in a jet. What are you talking about? Jeppesen. They've never had a union before. Their FON didn't work the way our like the amount of things that people do that they didn't hold a formal title for, but they did the legitimate work, and you can get it on a resume, and it gets a conversation started. It's huge. I had a guy yesterday volunteers with his local church. He mows 5 acres of property. He's torn down 3 structures and maintains all the tooling and equipment for free. He's like, well, that's not aviation. I didn't think it counted. You're like, of course it counts. Like when they read that on the resume, the recruiter's going, that's different. That's somebody that's, no pun intended, not afraid to get their hands dirty. That's somebody that if I ask them to do something, they're not going to say that's not my job, right? Like think about all the things that all of us do in everyday life that we take for granted, that we don't hold a title for, but makes an impact in other people's lives. You got to start getting that on the resumes, on the applications, and on your LinkedIn profile. That's the secret.
Great advice, James. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to switch and talk about your flying career a little bit.
Have you ever struggled with a headset that pinches or breaks its seal just because you're wearing glasses or a hat? Or maybe you've tried to make a critical call from the cockpit, only to be met with muffled, unclear audio? It's more than just an annoyance. It's a distraction you don't need in the left seat. It's time for an upgrade. Introducing the Lightspeed Zulu 4. The brand new premium headset from Lightspeed Aviation, available exclusively at Sporties. Experience truly unparalleled comfort and superior noise reduction with Lightspeed's unique frame-fit ear seals. These aren't just comfortable, they adapt perfectly, maintaining a secure noise-blocking seal around your ears even when you're wearing glasses, sunglasses, or a hat. And when you need to communicate, be heard like never before. The Zulu 4 features Lightspeed's best microphone yet, which offers an AI-enhanced mode for Bluetooth, ensuring your phone call to ATC or flight service is a remarkable 2 times clearer. But the Zulu 4 isn't just new innovations. You still get Lightspeed's renowned active noise reduction for an incredibly quiet cockpit, plus the rugged build quality you trust with durable Kevlar cables and a robust stainless steel headband. The Lightspeed Zulu 4 offers the perfect blend of innovation and proven performance, all for $200 less than other premium headsets. Get yours today, only at Sporties. Visit sporties.com/Zulu4 to learn more. Now, back to Pilot's Discretion.
We are back with James Onieal, who has flown in a variety of roles throughout his career, including airline fractional and even doing flight checks at the FAA. James, that diversity of experience to me makes you the perfect person to ask about quality of life and quality of job experience. I think topics that don't get enough attention among new pilots. So if I'm considering a job with, say, an airline versus a corporate flight department or a fractional, what are the things I should be thinking about beyond just the salary or the uniform or the titles? What are the other parts of being a professional pilot that can vary from job to job?
So it's a great question. So I have had a lot of jobs. I promise I'm a good employee. I've just been a victim of bad economies. So there's a couple of things that folks don't really, it doesn't click until they get there, right? So that concept of how much is enough, right? So when someone's getting started in their career, most of them are thinking, man, if I could just get to that wide body legacy, or if I could just get to that Gulfstream, right? And it seems so far off that there's no really concern of, am I going to like it? It's, you get the privilege of having this delusional aspiration that, like I said, I'm just going to put my head down and kind of get there. But the reality of it is, even right now, right? With how, folks are going, it feels slow. Even now, you'll still be the legacy carrier in 7, maybe 10 years if everything goes horribly wrong, right? 5, 7 years if everything goes well, right? So if you think about it, if you're 22 years old, I know you may not want to wait till you're 30 or 33 because your friends were getting there at 24. But let's say you get there at 30, you still have 35 years of a career left. You will have more time sitting in an airliner than you've been on the face of the earth. And so what people don't think is when you get there and there's no place left to go, there's no more further up, right? What do you want your life to look like for the next 35 years? Are you someone that likes routine? So I had a very good friend of mine. I flew for Colgan Air, is one of the airlines I flew for. And one of the guys that was my check airman made it over to United in like 2007. And I remember asking him, how do you like it? He goes, I'm a food and movie critic. I went, what do you mean? He goes, I show up to the terminal at 4:30. I get my coffee. I go into ops. Captain gives a briefing. I sit in the cockpit for the first hour of the flight. I go back to first class, start watching movies and eating meals. He goes, I sit there for about, 2-3 hours, go back up to the cockpit. We rotate out. He goes, I'm in the cockpit for the last hour of landing. I go to the hotel. I start lifting weights. I go do my run. I then have my 3, restaurants I like to go to, yada, yada, yada. He's a guy that liked routine. Exercise is really important to him, right? This is a guy that he lifted weights, right? So the idea of showing up at noon one day and flying till midnight, and then the next day being up at, 10 a.m. on a min-turn, right? That messed up his schedule, messed up his eating, it messed up his working out, it messed up his running, so on and so forth, right? That's his life. He likes routine. He likes working out. He likes fitness. He likes those things. Well, airlines are clearly going to be the place to go for a guy like that. They take someone like me. I like variety. Now, you take a look at I happen to fly for NetJets, right? You take a look at a NetJets, I'm showing at different times every day. I've got, at that point, I think it was like 12 different airplanes you could choose from in the fleet. You could do domestic, you can do international. You weren't just staying on one coast. That was fun. I like that. It was tiring, but it was fun. But man, if you like to get up at the same time every day, you're really not going to like that job. But if on a 4-day tour, after the 9th time you've been into LaGuardia, you're going, my brain is stopping working because I just keep doing the same thing every day, airlines probably aren't going to be for you. So the easiest place to start is to think through, if I could design the perfect life, notwithstanding the work, right? Because the happiest people, work fits into their life doesn't fit around work. So if you can think through, if I could design the perfect day, what would that look like? What time would I wake up? For example, if you're somebody that likes to sleep in, to use Southwest as an example, the ability to bid PM flying, where you're showing up at 2 PM, you're doing your legs and you're done for the day, right? That's beneficial. You can't do that at a NetJets or a FlexJet, or maybe a Part 91 for a principal where they decide last minute, hey, you know what? We're going to go over here today. Right? So think about what you want your normal life to look like. And then if you lean more towards the stability and routine, I'm giving somewhat generic advice. So this stuff normally gets stretched out over an hour or 2-hour conversation with someone. But in general, if you're more structured towards routine, then you're going to find probably the airlines are going to be the path. But if you like new challenges and novelty and changing, you might find the airlines get pretty boring for you pretty quick. And at the end of the day, when you get to take that selfie in the front of the jet, it gives you a hit of dopamine when you put that on social media. It's 7 minutes after it, you're left with actually living your life.
Yep.
It's cheaper to actually buy a fake uniform, ask one of your buddies if you could sit in the cockpit and take the photo, than it is to spend the next 35 years working at a place that's just not going to give you the fulfillment that you need.
Yep. Great advice about thinking about what the job actually is you're doing, not what you think it is, but how you actually will spend your hours in that job. James, we always like to end Pilot's Discretion with a lightning round we call Ready to Copy. I've got a bunch of questions on a variety of topics here. So I'll throw them at you and you read back with your quick answer. You ready to copy?
I am. I'm excited to see which one of these I don't know the answer to.
There's no wrong answers here, so we'll start with an easy one. What is the biggest mistake pilots make on their resume? When you get one sent your way, what is something that seems to happen too often?
They just put the facts and figures. They don't put bullets and content to start conversations. They think hiring is about the person with the highest flight time. It's not. It's who's the best overall fit as a person. So if you just give them certificates and ratings of flight time and the name of the company you work for and the years you worked there, no way to differentiate yourself between that and the other 10,000 resumes sitting on their desk.
How about an airline interview? What's the biggest mistake you see pilots making there?
The one that I made, the very first time I went into an interview was at ExpressJet Airlines. And I was terrified of walking in and being scripted. So I did zero preparation. I didn't pay a company. I didn't go online and review any questions. I showed up and was myself. And man, was that a great learning experience and what not to do. Good interview prep is not about teaching you when they ask this, you say that. Great interview prep is, here are the questions that they're asking. Let's start thinking about stories and examples and experiences that you've had that you can use to fit into these different types of questions. And then let's practice taking this question and finding how many different stories you can make fit so that when you go into an interview, you're not scripted, but you have 10 tools in your pocket that you can pull out depending on what problem they give you to solve.
What is something you learn as a fractional pilot that they don't teach you in ground school?
Treat everyone the same. And I've used this in business. The person that spends $0 with me and the person that has been the top client get treated with the same level of respect. When I got hired by NetJets, I had a specific example. Walking around the FBO, this guy's wearing torn up jeans and a dirty old t-shirt, picking trash up off the ground. That was a guy I was flying. It turned out he owned every building in the city. You don't ever know who you're dealing with. And so if you treat people differently based on the status you have in your head, you're going to get it wrong. But if you automatically give kindness and consideration and respect to people until they do something that says, hey, listen, put distance between you and them, life's a lot easier.
Back to your days as both an airline pilot and a fractional pilot, where is the best layover?
Anywhere in the mountains for me. So I really like the Aspen and Eagle and Rifle and the places like that. So
how about the worst?
You can get some nice quiet walks in. Teterboro. I'm from Jersey, by the way. I was born in that hospital that the noise abatement thing is for. So, man, I never see Teterboro again. It'll be too soon.
So I know you spent some time working at a very busy flight school, really kind of running it, as I understand it, early in your career. There's something I have great respect for as somebody who's involved in the flight school business. It's not easy. What do you think is one of the keys to a successful flight school? You can go anywhere to get flight training. It's very hard to go to a place where they will tailor the program to your learning style. And so the biggest problem that I see, honestly, for both flight schools and CFIs is they want to boilerplate it out. As opposed to saying, okay, today I have a student that wants to become a professional pilot. He has the financing to do it. He wants to get it done fast. How do I structure a program where he knows exactly what to expect, exactly what he needs to study, exactly what the completion standards are, so he or she can move through as fast as possible? But right when that lesson's done, I might have somebody that's a business owner that doesn't care if it takes them 4,000 hours to get their private pilot certificate, but they want to sit there and they want to understand exactly why they're doing everything that they're doing. I would have students that I would go out and teach that were 18, 19, 20 years old. I'd show them a pre-flight once, and on the next lesson, they were showing me things, right? Fast forward later on that day, I might have somebody as a 45-year-old guy, 50-year-old guy, and I'm not kidding, taking 2 hours to do a pre-flight.
because he wants to know every screw and rivet and antenna and button and switch, and you've got to switch. You've got to adjust your teaching style around that, especially when you take a look at what the cost of flying is these days. The people that are showing up had to work hard to make that money. Give them an experience that's worth it.
I mentioned you got to do flight checks for the FAA, which sounds like a unique and interesting job. So what does a typical flight look like there? What are you doing when you're flying flight checks?
It's like asking what a typical day at the circus is like. So here's what there's a lot of misnomers about flight checks. So people think we're out shooting approaches all day long. It is a lot more complicated than that. So what'll happen is Thursday of the week prior, I will get what they call an itinerary, and it will give me the navigational systems that I need to check for that week. That could be a VOR, it could be an ILS, it could be commissioning a new GPS approach. It could be something called RFI, radio frequency interference. Hey, we're getting interference on a radio frequency, or we're getting interference on an ILS. We need you to go track it down. That schedule is going to be color coded, so I know, hey, if I don't get it done this week, we have to shut the system off the air, versus I have a week to get this done, a month to get this done, 3 months to get this done. So I've got to go through and I have to prioritize the work that's going to get done. Then I have to take a look through the engineering manuals to go find out what actually needs to be checked. And so take an ILS, right? I've got to check things like modulation and structure. I've got to check signal strength. And then I've got to check all these different things in different configurations, right? So an ILS will take 2 hours to inspect. And I'm not just flying the ILS. I'm flying arcs across the final at 10 miles. I'm flying holding patterns between 10 miles and 2 miles, and I'm shooting low approaches. There's one pilot in the cockpit who's flying the airplane. There's a second pilot in the cockpit who is managing the inspection, coordinating with air traffic, and listening to the computer operator in the back talk to the maintenance guys on the ground. Both pilots are looking out the window for student pilots that are working opposite direction to you that day. Maybe you're in and out of Midway or Chicago O'Hare, right? Coordinating with air traffic to keep separation between you and the other aircraft. And then the person in the back has what looks like about 15 EKG traces up, where they're tracking all these different tolerances. There's usually about 7 or 8 tolerances per check that you're running to make sure everything's in tolerance. If it's out of tolerance, I've got to figure out what's likely broken and what additional checks we need to do to get it in tolerance. So at any given time, there's 4 radios going on inside that cockpit. Now, on a stressful day, and this has legitimately happened, you can have a trainee controller with a maintenance guy working on the ILS that's in training, with a pilot on board the aircraft that's in training, with a mission specialist computer operator that's in training. And so you've got an air traffic control instructor, you've got a maintenance instructor, me as an instructor pilot in the King Air, plus a mission specialist instructor, all at the same time.
Sounds like a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
It is juggling flaming swords while riding a unicycle on a basketball. And then, by the way, there's a lot of operational pressure, because let's just use a Chicago O'Hare or New York. If I shut down that ILS, I shut down commerce into that airport. So we're not going to leave it on the air if it's out of tolerance. But the second I land, I'm on the phone with air traffic. I'm on the phone with Washington, D.C., and I'm on the phone with the maintenance guys on the ground going, what parts do we need? How quickly can we get the airplane airborne again? Can we start rerouting traffic into the airport so that we can have space to get this thing up and running? Like, it's my job to keep the system running safely. And you got to do both. It's got to be safe, but it's also got to be running. So, take coronavirus. We went out and shut all the systems down and then turned them all back on again. I mean, it was some pretty heavy lifts.
All right. I always like to ask at least one non-aviation question. And I know when you and I were having lunch, you said you come from a family of police officers. You're the one renegade who's not a cop in some way. So what is your best cop joke? Surely you have some that you tell around the family table.
Okay. So, I don't know if I call it a joke, but my dad always loves it when I refer to them as historians with guns. And I go, Dad, what use is it for you to show up to my house after someone's robbed all my stuff and take down notes on what they stole? It'd be a little helpful if you found them before they came over. Um, and then since they're cops and firefighters, so my dad always likes to make fun of the firefighters. He goes, you ever watch shows like ER? He goes, the cops are always working. Firefighters are always hitting on the nurses or coming up with recipes for a cookbook. So there's a lot of good internal family rivalry.
That's good. All right, James, our last question is always the same on pilot's discretion. You have one final flight. We want to know, what are you flying and where are you going?
Okay. I mean, if I could choose anything, it'd be the Concorde. I don't know if that's an option or not, though.
Everything's available for this question.
Yeah. And if they were going to give me the Concorde, I'd probably do touch and goes at JFK LaGuardia at Newark just to, mess with them.
That's the first time we've had that answer, but I think I like that. That's good.
Yeah. Just have fun with the airspace. So,
James, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Pilot's Discretion, brought to you by Sporties, training and equipping pilots worldwide for over 60 years. For more episodes and today's show links, visit sporties.com/podcast. I'm John Zimmerman. We'll see you next time on Pilot's Discretion.